Guys, welcome to a very, very special episode number 3 of the Friends of Fury podcast. We have a very special guest joining us, the leader of the Rabid Empire, the mastermind himself, Nigel Rabid. Wow, welcome to the show, man. We sure do appreciate it. How you doing today, man?
I'm having a pleasant Sunday. Thank you very much for asking. Well, I had Tex-Mex for lunch. Lovely church service to absolve myself of my supposed sins, which, I mean, obviously I don't have any because I'm a wonderful human being. But very excited about a lot of things future-wise, particularly with SWE, but as in the immediate, there is a possibility that I may actually go to the cinema tonight, which is something that I haven't done since, what was it, like, I think September of 2020. I used to be a very avid cinema goer, and
I'm going to take a guess and say you're going to watch the new Purge movie. Is that right?
That is incorrect. That is incorrect. Oh. I'm actually looking forward to seeing the new Black Widow film.
Okay. Bunch of Marvel fans here. We totally get it. We definitely have.
I'm a comic book as a whole fan. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the actual books, I'm more of a DC fan. There are a number of Marvel heroes that I really love and really enjoy, and I particularly enjoy on top of the Marvel Knights, the Punisher stories that they did with that, starting with Welcome Back, Frank, written by Garth Ennis and penciled by Steve Dillon. But also a big fan of the Ultimates comic line, which actually inspired and led to what we see in the cinema today with Marvel Studios. As a matter of fact, that was the first time that the Samuel L. Jackson-esque Nick Fury appeared, was in the Ultimates comic line. So if you've not read it, I highly recommend it. But I find Marvel comics, the comics themselves, largely very bleak. Everything is very a lot more real than I mean, we're talking about people with godlike powers. At least somebody be appreciative of them, opposed to going, this guy's a menace, and I'm going to dedicate my newspaper to ruining someone who's got the build of a 13-year-old boy. Is anybody? The whole city is behind me. Excellent, fantastic. I've got a flat top and a toothbrush mustache. Yeah,
I wanted to ask your opinion on the Deceased, the zombie comics for DC. I don't know if you had read them or not.
Deceased?
Yes, sir.
I haven't had a chance to take a look at Deceased. I have seen Marvel Zombies, but I think they're both written by Kirkman, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
I've been meaning to take a look at them because I really enjoyed Marvel Zombies. I loved the Walking Dead series, which unlike a lot of people, well, I guess like a lot of people modern, I watched the show because I'm a comic book fan, but I'm also a bit of a snob. If it didn't have color, I didn't want to deal with it. So I was
like that.
Yeah, I ended up doing things like, I missed the boat on The Crow, and ended up having to buy James O'Barr's books after the fact when they were expensive. The individual books. I've got a number of compiled books. As a matter of fact, I've got one in my bookcase right now, that lovely slipcover hardback, got autographed by Mr. O'Barr himself. Very lovely human being. If I recall correctly, lives up in Denton, Texas still. Now Deceased is on my list, but I've been a lot of the SWE Fury fans don't know this about me because they've not really, when you guys started following me on social media and things like that, this had already happened. But 2018 was a very difficult year. I ended up, my wife separated from me, and then we were divorced in 2019. So by the time SWE Fury had gotten to their first show and was about to launch their second TV taping, the scope of my life had really shifted. And as a result of that in 2018, because when that happened, I was left with my dogs and my cats. So it's 4 dogs, 4 cats. No one in their right mind is going to rent a house to me. And so I moved in with Mother and Father Rabid, and all of my worldly possessions, with the exception of like, you know, one SUV full, are in storage. So yeah, all of my major graphic novels are in storage. I'm in the middle of DC Comics had done a reprint and a reorganization of Hellblazer, the John Constantine,
Yes, sir.
created by Alan Moore, and I don't know what number book I'm on, because they're all in storage, so I haven't been able to buy any since. And so I stopped going into comic book stores, because I was like, I want to buy things, but I don't know what I don't have.
You may own it already.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that as a human being. I'm an enthusiast. I'm a fan. I'm a collector. Comic books, music, film. Even collectible trading card games.
Yes, sir.
I do a lot of that stuff. I enjoy a lot of that stuff, which probably explains why I don't drive fancy cars. Right.
So you mentioned your cats and dogs. They have some pretty interesting names. How did you come across those names?
Well, my eldest, and I'm apologize because it's still a little bit raw. My eldest passed away on.
Okay.
We're sorry.
Sorry to hear that.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. He was my stepdaughter's cat. He was a wonderful cat. Poor fella. In 2020, I lost two of my dogs. One to two forms of cancer, and one to kidney disease. And while we were getting everybody checked to make sure everybody was healthy, turns out one of the cats had diabetes, and that was my eldest. And at the end of 2020, I ended up with a little bit of coronavirus, like COVID-19, which incidentally, if you notice from the December taping in Greenville, I don't appear anywhere on that. The reason being is that I was supposed to be there, but I had contracted COVID-19. At first, I didn't think I was sick. I was like, I don't have it. This is just a cold. This is the test was screwed up. This is just a cold. And literally, I'm like, I found out Tuesday, Wednesday, this is a cold. Thursday, I'm telling Tom Lance, the owner of SWE Fury, this is stupid. I've been misdiagnosed. I have a cold. If I don't feel any worse tomorrow, I'm coming to the show on Saturday.
Yeah,
tomorrow happens by 9:15. I'm like, I gotta go lie down. I gotta lie down. I go into my room. I sit on my bed. I don't even lie on my bed. I sit on my bed and just, I don't even know if I passed out. I realized like two and a half hours later, I'm lying backwards in the God's most awkward position. Well, just like, why does my back hurt? Why am I lying down? I need to get in bed. It's and from that point, I was literally bedridden from that point for like the next 2.5, 3 weeks. And so I missed the taping.
Sorry to interrupt, but my sister had actually contracted COVID. It was around the time it was first getting really bad, and she didn't believe that she had gotten it, didn't believe it. And she kept wanting to come out of her room. I locked herself in her room. she would leave the room. I point her back in there. I said, I'm not trying to get sick.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's the worst thing I have ever had in my life. And I had a flu that kept me in bed for 3 days. So to anyone who has had the disease, God bless you. And to anyone who has lost someone to the disease, my deepest and sincerest sympathies, my love and prayers go with you. To anybody who says it doesn't exist, I pray to God you never get it. It is. Now it don't because I still live in my parents' house because I'm dealing post divorce bankruptcy, and as a result of that, my mother's a septuagenarian, my father's an octogenarian. I'm sorry, 70-year-old and 80-year-old, and being caretakers as parents tend to be, they kept on trying to come in and take care of me, and they both ended up with it. So they both ended up going to the hospital. They sent mom home They went Christmas Eve, sent mom home, and then they kept dad overnight. And overnight turned out from Christmas Eve to the following Wednesday. So from I think it was that Saturday to the following Wednesday, he was in the hospital recovering. And he actually, as a result of being in the hospital, got better faster than all of us.
Right.
But you know, it was a very, very rough thing. But anyway, the reason why we got onto that is during that time, my eldest cat took ill. Not took ill because of the diabetes. It happened once before, and this time he stopped eating. And because he stopped eating, you know, he lost a lot of weight and never really regained it. And you know, the diabetes and that weight loss took a toll on him, and he ended up having a seizure the other day and passing away, which is really very rough. But my cats are all named after Egyptian gods and goddesses, and my dogs are all named after, in one form or fashion, Disney princesses. The cats, just because it seems appropriate to name a cat after an Egyptian deity, because you know cats were worshipped by Egyptians, and I haven't posted it on social media yet. I mean to. I just haven't taken the time to. I got to download it from my Dropbox and then upload it. And you know, I know it's all a button click, but I could be playing Disney Emoji Blitz instead. So that's what I mean. I'm trying to unlock another Darth Vader and so I got a reason. But you know, I got a picture of the cat sitting, paws out, face looking like the Sphinx.
Oh,
I mean, it's awesome. It's a great picture. And it was when we first got him. I don't think we had even had a name for him yet. And so we started with the ex-wife had snapped the photo, and we were talking about it. And she's like, you know, he looks like the Sphinx. It's like, well, we should give him an Egyptian name. And so it became Osiris.
Okay.
To carry on a long-running joke from an online comic strip that I've been a fan of for decades now, PvP Online, player versus player, there's a character in there named Skull the Troll. Later on in the series, you find out that Skull the Troll, his full name is Skull Theodore Troll. And everybody's like, Theodore? And they go, well, yeah, the is short for Theodore. So now all of my cats and all of my dogs have a middle name that starts with THE. So Osiris is Osiris Theodore Osiris Theodore Mao. His younger sister is Isis Theoclea Kidde. Her younger brother is Amun-Ra Thelonious Kidde. And the youngest is Nuit or Nut, depending on how you want to spell it, because it's both the same deity. Nut Theophilia Cat. She's the one that's labeled cat because of it's a capital K, capital T, and the attitude just kind of fits right there. You go, oh, she's one of those. And then my stepdaughter is the one that started the namings on the dogs, because we had gotten this lab chow Rottweiler mix that had just this little light brushing of silver on the tail. And you know, she said that kind of looked like mist, and it reminded her of the princess of the fairies in the Tinkerbell movies, Silver Mist, and so the dog became Silver Mist Teresa Booth.
That's a cool name, though.
It's a great name. It's a great name. And then the you know, her beagle mixed sister became Mulan Therese Pooch. And then the two that I affectionately refer to as the puppies, even though they're now like 7 years old, are Padme Therese and Leia Theon.
Okay.
Puppy.
Yeah, Padme and Leia.
And exactly. And because I was exultant about it because I got this smirk on my face. It's like, it's not gonna be Cinderella, it's not gonna be any of this. This is Princess Leia and Queen Amidala. Her name is Padme. It's just Star Wars, baby.
This is my thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And thankfully, the ex was also a Star Wars fan, so she's like, no, I'm right behind it. You don't have to be this excited about it, but I like that you are. But yeah, no, that's all the cats and dogs got named. And, you know, because I'm
While
weird.
we were talking about that, I was going to ask you about your Star Wars love.
Mhm.
I was just going to ask you with a quick beginner question. Which one's your favorite trilogy? The original, prequel, or
The
sequel?
original trilogy is my favorite trilogy.
A good man. A good man.
Yeah, no, you know, because this isn't a Star Wars podcast, Case, you and I can talk about, you know, in more detail later.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of things that I enjoy that have been done since Disney took ownership, and there have also been a lot of things that I've had problems with.
I mean, Mandalorian was good.
Mandalorian was gorgeous. Season 7 of Clone
Clone
was
Wars.
excellent. Bad Batch has been wonderful. I'm looking forward to, although slightly trepidatiously, I'm looking forward to the Acolyte, mostly because of the politics involved with the people who are creating the Acolyte.
Oh, are they?
I'm one of those people. I have a problem with people trying to shove political agendas, and that's been my biggest problem with some of the things that've been going on, specifically with the Disney sequel trilogy. I feel like there's too much agenda pushing, not so much politics, but agenda pushing.
Completely agree with you.
You know, but you know, I love, you know, I love the cast that they've used. I've loved a lot of the visuals. I mean, you know, I abhor 8. I think 8 is a terrible film, but
Yes,
visually speaking, it's gorgeous. Rian Johnson has a beautiful eye for it. And I've loved most everything else he's done. I just don't want him near the Skywalker saga. And even though it's finished, you know, I'd welcome if somebody would give him, you know, a standalone, you know, you do a standalone film, and if it does well, we'll do some more. I'd welcome that, because I mean, the man's a master storyteller. I just think the problem is that he had people with agendas telling him what story to tell.
Yes,
you know, and that
wouldn't allow him to tell his own vision on the story.
Yeah. Well, and I think the biggest problem for the sequel trilogy didn't have a story. You know, it's broken here within the past year that Bob Iger, J.J. Abrams, and Kathleen Kennedy all collaborated to write 7 and put the ideas together for 7, and then Bob left Kathleen and Ryan to do 8. And 8 went very sideways with
very much so sideways. You could say that.
And then they pulled J.J. Abrams in to try and, you know, cobble together 9, which I really feel that the Colin if you've not read the Colin Trevorrow treatment for what was going to be, I forgot what the original title was, Revenge of the Jedi, I think was the original title that they had for 9. And I think that if they had gone with that, 9 would have been much better, because I think they were kind of, not that Abrams did a bad job. I think Abrams, he did his best to try and pull everything back in the direction that fans would have wanted it to go. But I think Colin Trevorrow had the best idea, and that was, you know, let's take the story that was written and that was done, and instead of trying to patchwork it and make everything feel like we've backtracked or trying to rewrite and re-edit, I think that what they should have done is just, all right, so what can we do to address concerns and complaints about the last film, and then let's build on that. Because the last film, I mean, the stuff that I forget who the fellow is, but there's a fellow on YouTube who read the entire script, and he put the conceptual artwork that was available for that script, put that up. And it really was going to be a Star War. I mean, we were going to actually see serious land-based battle on top of space battles, on top of Jedi battles, on top of and it looked like it was going to be a really incredible, amazing thing. But for whatever reason, he got pulled from it, and we got J.J. Abrams to do the best that he could. And I think what J.J. Abrams ended up doing was understanding that the powers that be said, don't do this. And so, all right, well, I can't do this, so I got to find a way to do. And
he put blinders on and tried to go around it.
Yeah, and it's hard to do that creatively. But I love Solo, and I love Rogue One, and I love The Mandalorian, and I love Episode 7. So, I mean, while while Star Wars has been frustrating as far as the saga is concerned, I really think that overall we've got a lot of good that we've had, and I think we've got a lot more good coming, especially with Filoni being put in charge of creative, and it sounds like Favreau is going to succeed Kathleen Kennedy, and that Kathleen Kennedy has not been put out to pasture, but Kathleen Kennedy has been set on the, hey, why don't you go make sure that Indiana Jones,
make sure that's good.
Never gets a good review.
Yeah.
But anyway, wrestling. How about
Wrestling?
wrestling?
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I want to jump in here. The leader of the Rabid Empire, Nigel Rabid. Nigel, thank you for coming on.
Yes.
We appreciate learning about the feline dynasty of the Rabid Empire, as well as your interest of Star Wars.
And K9.
Canine.
Can't forget the boys for the girls.
Right.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for coming on. I want to steer us a little bit to how you, where your interest in professional wrestling came from. So you've had a career in professional wrestling. And a lot of times when people talk about how they got into wrestling, there was normally a wrestler, a moment in time in professional wrestling that really caught your heart and your imagination. So take us back to that time and how it led you to today.
Are you ready for probably the weirdest answer you're ever going to get?
We are all
Absolutely.
We can't wait.
Okay, so all right, my family moved to this country in 1979. We moved to Nashville, Tennessee, where my little sister was born. My father was doing. My father's a Anglican priest, which in this country is the Episcopal Church, and he served in a church in Tennessee. I tell you the name, but I was like 3.5, 4. So I don't remember the name. But after that, my family moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and from there we moved to a suburb, or not even we moved to a suburb of Covington, Kentucky, which is a sister city to Cincinnati, Ohio. And I tell you all of that so you understand that my conscious world has been in this country. I have some memories of England, but not many. So my family lived in a suburb of Covington, Kentucky, and I was going to my primary school there, elementary, and I think it must have been like maybe my third or fourth year. No, it was fourth year. It's fourth year, because fourth year they tried parochial school my second and third year, and I did all right with that. But parochial school, nuns, priest's child, priest, not preacher's kid, priest. And the Catholic Church has kind of this thing about priests being married, and kids have this thing about not understanding concepts outside of their ability to comprehend. So, a Catholic child, you say priest, their mind is the guys that run our church. They're not allowed to get married. They do all of this thing. And so me being a priest's kid, the nuns were very sweet to a point, and the kids were kids. Children can be terrible. So I finally ended up in public school, and I don't know if they still do it, because it's been a very long time since I've been in public school. But they had that little shop. Mom and dad give you pocket money, and you go to the school. I guess it was called bookshop, and where you buy folders and kitschy little erasers and pencils and automatic pencils. And I had some pocket money, and I was going to buy something. And that's literally almost how I ended up being a collector. Someone gave me money. I was like, well, I'm going to use this to buy something. I'm a wonderful capitalist. But I remember standing at the bookshop, and it's one of those, it's not even really a proper shop. It's a set of double doors where you open up one, and it's basically a closet with shelves and things on it. and I'm looking in there, and I see this folder of this guy that looks really, really cool. And he's got, like the martial arts bandana on, and he's got a gi, and it's got, that WW, that old school WWF logo on it.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's cool. I want that.
Yeah.
And at that point, I hadn't even seen any WWE television or WWF television at the time. I really didn't have a concept of what I was looking at, except that this guy looked like a martial artist, and I roughly knew what the idea of a martial artist was. I mean, Karate Kid wasn't even out yet, so all I knew about martial arts was whatever was being shown, Sunday afternoon on like that cable channel that local channel that either ran bad martial arts films from the 70s,
With the bad lip sync.
Yeah, and I say bad martial arts from the 70s. I'm sitting there going, which was only like 2-3 years away at that point. God, so I had that picture. I was like, so I want that. It turns out to be a folder promoting the first run of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Right.
And this is before he had the dragon headdress and breathing fire and fighting ninjas.
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Right, Ricky the Dragon, but I never, and the crazy thing is about it is because of that, and because my family was not anti-cable, but we didn't invest in cable, and so therefore the concept of pay-per-view and all that was so beyond. I mean, I didn't really fully wrap my brain around pay-per-view until I started getting my hands on SummerSlam VHS cassettes.
Oh,
like
okay.
that. So people talk about the granddaddy of them all, and where were you? And it's like blissfully unaware that the opportunity to spend my money on it existed. I saw that, and my imagination was captivated. But it wasn't until flipping channels on a Saturday morning and cartoons have all shut off. WWE was brilliant in the 80s because I want to say it was Superstars of Wrestling was the name of the program. And it ran at exactly the time that every other national channel stopped running Saturday morning cartoons. So now, being a kid, and I want more of that fun stuff. So you click, finding more cartoons, but you come across, WWE wrestling, and in the 80s, very cartoonish, very over the top.
Yeah, you had Hogan, Macho Man, all them.
And I want to say some of the first guys that I ever saw were, the Dream Team. So it was Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. And watching them wrestle and watch them, have their breakup, and you get into the Ultimate Warrior and Jake the Snake Warrior was even later from that.
Right.
So now it's really hard to pinpoint beyond that what really latched me. Of course, in the 80s, of course, I was a Hulkamaniac. Every kid was a Hulkamaniac. But I also really appreciated Roddy Piper. I loved the villainy of the $1 Million Man when he came on the forefront. Randy Savage, my heart broke, as well as every other child's heart broke when the Mega Powers exploded. And all of these things fed into my love for professional wrestling. But the thing that is the strongest and the thing that stays with me the most was Gorilla and his commentary partners. Now, so you have got Gorilla, and you get occasionally Lord Alfred Hayes, or Gorilla and Jesse Ventura, and Gorilla and Bobby, and those were really the mainstays when they were doing those kind of jump cut from different venues. These were all the recordings on the house shows that we thought were good, kind of things. And it was really Bobby more than anyone else that really. And then you'd hear Bobby, and then you'd see Bobby, and it was really just kind of an incredible thing to participate and be a part of that with as a fan. So I hope I adequately answered the question, but I don't know that I gave you anything definitive.
I had just told Jeffrey last night. I said, when you watch Nigel, he reminds me a lot of Bobby the Brain Heenan. And I had no clue if you had meant to or not, but you really exude the same energy as he does.
Thank you.
And I would say also, Case, if I can jump in, to me, Jim Cornette.
Absolutely.
With him with the tennis racket, and then Nigel with his paddle.
The cricket
racket.
That's who they
It is not a paddle. What is with you Americans and your BDSM?
I was going to jump into that because people often refer to it as a paddle, and I'm like, it's a cricket bat. I don't know why. It's a cricket bat.
Dirty minded.
I've got to say paddle.
Look, I don't use it to discipline children. I don't use it in fun leather games with a consenting adults, and I don't do it to get a boat moving. So paddle, it's not. It's also not connected to anything that can, shock the heart alive. So, it's still not a paddle.
You actually
I'm sorry.
You actually made a comment that I found very interesting. You said that you were talking about Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, which, I was a 90 kids, and when I think of wrestling, I obviously think of them too. But you said that commentary needs a good and bad commentator, and I'd never thought of it that way before. But you're absolutely right. Can you kind of illuminate what you mean by that?
Sure.
I get what you're saying, but
before I start on that, let me say that I have nothing but the utmost respect for the work that Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler have done. They are incredible commentators. And the only reason why they aren't in my very tippy top, like they are with a lot of people, is because of that dynamic. What ended up happening, and this is, it's actually The Rock's fault. And the reason why it's The Rock's fault is Jerry Lawler at one point had said something to the effect during one of the Rock interview, DVD sets that WWE had put out. Jerry had said something to the effect of, I would look pretty stupid if I was hating on a guy who was talking about poontang pie and all of this.
That is pretty true.
And that's Jerry feeding into the image that he wants to portray now. And I get it, but it's what shifted him from being the heel commentator to being just kind of a color guy. And because he didn't because you lose that good and evil dynamic,
right,
because it's the point and counterpoint. If you pay attention, none of the news programs that are on today that do, like CNN or Fox News or anybody where they sit down and they've got their point and counterpoint, it's always terrible. And the reason why it's terrible is, one, you always outnumber the odd opinion, and so everybody shouts the odd opinion down, and it's always somebody who's just kind of like, I've got this very strong opinion, but I'm not going to be very, and instead of it being like it is in wrestling, in commentary, a reasonable, I don't want to necessarily say healthy, but a reasonable exchange of ideas between, this is what, the play-by-play commentator sees, and they call it straight down the middle. They're not biased. They're, maybe on occasion they lean towards, the good guy because that's what's right. Basically. Yeah. And I love, this is why I love Gorilla is Gorilla would always give credit where credit was due. If somebody was a formidable force as a bad guy, it's he's don't get me wrong, Andre the Giant is a big terrifying monster of a but then he turned back around and go but he's still a jerk, and those things are fair. But if you don't have somebody to advocate or even offer complete, my favorite thing, especially like I did years ago for a company. They did a heel turn right in the middle of the match, and from the beginning of the match, I am just tearing down the good guy, just tearing. He turns heel, and I about face completely. I don't even acknowledge any of the things that I said previously. My co-commentator tries to call me on the carpet for it, and I'm talking to him like he's lost his mind and he doesn't know what he's talking about because I never said any such thing. And literally, the young man was name is Eamon, and literally, Eamon's looking at me like this. It's when you're a bad guy and you're doing commentary, when you're a heel and you're doing commentary, and if you don't support the villain,
what are you doing? Then because I do a lot of commentary for a lot of different companies, and there's a lot of companies that will put together these amazing talents that they don't have any they don't have any story. We call it a spot show in the business, and there's no real they're not really trying to tell a story. They're just putting two amazing talents in the ring and let them tell the story of the competition, but not a story of good and evil. And in my mind, the story of good and evil is absolutely paramount to professional wrestling to grab the attention and the emotions of the viewer. You can watch a clinical, very high flying, incredible match between, say, for example, Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho, and just be stunned at the sheer athleticism and the story of this guy's talented and this guy's talented and who's better. But it doesn't have the same emotional grasp as the story of good and evil. And that's
because at that point it's more like an exhibition and you're showing off your ability, which is fine, but why should I care?
Well, it's the why should I care when it's exhibition is because you want to see some incredible athleticism, you want to see some incredible talent, but that's not where you get that deep emotional hook. You don't get that deep.
You're drawn in.
If Charlie Haas didn't treat people and yell at the fans and be this just monstrous human being in the ring. When he's facing somebody like at the last taping, he faced a fellow by the name of Big Fitz. Big Fitz being the good guy, being a proud former drill sergeant in the United States Army, going to stand up for what's right. God damn it. Now you've got a story you can get behind. You've got the dichotomy of good and evil.
You're emotionally invested in that. You're emotionally invested.
Exactly. And
that's in the building. No one in the building cannot be emotionally invested in that, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. That's what you need in this stuff, and that's what makes it. It's irresistible. How can you not buy into that?
And that's what makes. And that go back to the actual question is that's what makes the heel and face or heel and neutral commentary so important, because if you don't have an advocate for the rules and then an advocate for not the rules, then you as the television viewer or wherever you're watching it, you as the viewer don't get quite that support to hook in, to lock into. I'll tell you right now, there are more pay-per-views that I have gotten emotionally invested in as a child because of what Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan, or Gorilla Monsoon and Roddy Piper, or Gorilla Monsoon. Are you seeing a theme? You don't get that emotional investment without that. And if you don't tell that story the right way, you start. It's kind of like how professional wrestling has gone today, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so if you pay attention to my social media, I am always sharing SWE Fury things, and I am always and it's not just because I'm promoting, it's because I believe in what we're trying to do. We're
Yeah.
trying to sell the professional wrestling of our childhood, and not in the, we're going to sell it in the big cartoony. I mean, don't get me wrong. If it was big cartoony, I'd have a lot of fun with that. I mean, come on. You know, it's turning the one-man gang into a Akeem the African Dream. I mean, how can that not be something you sit there and go,
What's
What?
going on?
Yeah.
you know, Demolition and the Powers of Pain and the Legion of Doom, God rest them. You know, you've got those larger than life characters. That's amazing. And SWE, we're trying to get back to the larger than life characters, and we're trying to do it with the correct storytelling.
Yes.
With the
Yeah.
correct,
You know, I had touched on it before. It has that feel. It has that mid-90s feel. And, you know, me personally, and that's what I grew up loving. And it gets it back. I mean, it got me back into it. I was completely out. You know, I hadn't watched wrestling for so many years. And it drew me back in. I come to the carpet show, and it's amazing. It has that attitude feel. It has that attitude era feel, and it's great, man. And that's why we're doing this, you know. And it's amazing. I was gonna kind of circle back. You know, it's amazing to see. We were talking about coronavirus.
Yeah.
The absolute rocket ship that SWE had during this. I mean, it's mind blowing. You know, where so many millions of people have suffered and stuff, but this company has taken off, and it is incredible.